And it's time for Lefties Losing It. Let's start in the UK, where a man in a red dress defaces a war memorial as crowds look on. No one tries to stop him. No one says a word. This is what civilisational decline looks like. Now, talking about civilisational decline, California is a perfect example, blessed with every natural advantage but riddled with crime and poverty. And yet the governor thinks he can be president, and he's spending good money producing content like this, attacking Donald Trump.
Wake up, America. Wake up to what Donald Trump is doing. Here he is once again trying to rig the system. He doesn't believe in the rules. We can't stand back and watch this democracy disappear district by district. We have got to meet fire with fire.
The chutzpah there is extraordinary. It's all about projection with these Democrats. Now let's hear from a CNN host, Zachary, on Bill Maher's program, and he gives a very important reality check for Gavin and his ilk.
This is a huge Democratic Party problem. If you look at Democratic cities, they are terribly run. They have incredibly high taxes. It is impossible to build, so the cost of housing... Let me finish. I'll give you a chance. Cost of housing is crazy in places like New York and Chicago. If you look at Democratic states, you go look at New York versus Florida, okay? Roughly the same population. The budget of New York State is twice that of Florida. What do they have? Streets paved with gold? I live in New York. I pay the highest taxes in New York. You get nothing for it. And I think that is the image people have of the Democratic Party. Lots of taxes, lots of regulation, but nothing gets done.
Now let's hear from Kamala Harris. She enjoys cocktails and incoherent rants. Here she goes with the latter.
I think what they're doing is they're cheating. They're cheating. They want to change the current system to make it bend toward the outcome they want. And so, if you believe the public reporting, they get a call that says, hey, redo your lines, even though the fallout is going to include exactly what you said, which is, taking the franchise, the vote, away from specific communities. And in the case of Texas, Latino and Black voters. Yeah.
Just about everything she said there was a lie, half lie, or just confused Kamala babble. And it got worse as Kamala praised the pitiful Texas legislators who fled the state and abandoned their duty.
And I have to say that, those Texan legislators, good for them.
And being an incoherent simpleton runs in the family. Here is Kamala's stepdaughter whining about climate anxiety. She feels disgust, folks, so much disgust.
I feel disgust at what's going on in the world around genocides, the loss of rights, the loss of health care, the just general fear that everyone has surrounding affordability, their lives, their livelihood, like everything. It feels so big. I think everything with the environment is really getting to me. And it is I experience a lot of climate anxiety, like a lot of us do. It's not funny.
Wrong. It is funny. It's hilarious, in fact. Let's hear now from the thoroughly discredited James Comey. You remember the former FBI director who played not an insignificant role in the Russian collusion hoax, who improperly leaked information to activist journalists. The Biden DOJ declined to charge him for that. He may not be so lucky now that he's under criminal investigation. And don't forget that bizarre behaviour where he posted a threat or a death wish against the president Remember that lunacy? He claims he didn't know what it all meant. Well, now Comey has really lost the plot, posting a lengthy video about Taylor Swift and, of course, Donald Trump.
And Donald Trump is still president and still humiliating America on a national stage, standing next to Vladimir Putin. It's like a dream, a bad dream you can't wake up from. But I don't want to talk about that bad dream this week. I want to talk about a truly inspirational public figure named Taylor Swift. Of course, I watched her podcast interview with the Kelsey brothers. Of course, I watched the whole thing, although on YouTube, Patrice and I got kicked off for the last 15 minutes and finished it on her phone. But I watched it. You see, Taylor Swift and I go way back. I went to my first concert of hers 15 years ago. I've been to a second, and I have helped financially support the attendance of a lot of family members at others. I'm in a family's Swiftie group chat.
What the what? What is he on about? It's the former director of the FBI. I don't know if he's angling for some sort of not guilty by reason of insanity plea, should there be any charges. That mad rant went on for another 5 minutes, and his love of Taylor Swift was just a means to bash Donald Trump and Republicans. I'm telling you, this dude needs professional help.
And don't get me wrong, we have our jerks, millions of them, you may have noticed. In particular, there's a stunning coarseness and ugliness in the Republican Party today. It's upsetting, but it's also a minority of America. On the whole, we aren't like that, and we don't like that. I think that's a big part of the reason so few Americans support Donald Trump when they have to see him and that up close, and why Republicans are so worried about what's coming for them next year, which is what makes me think about Taylor Swift. She's made clear that she sees Donald Trump for what he is, and last year she urged Americans not to make the serious mistake of electing him. Of course, we're now living with the consequences of that mistake, but while our elderly makeup-covered president is posting about whether Taylor Swift is still hot and declaring that he can't stand her, what's she doing? Living her best life.
Yep, he's genuinely lost the plot, or perhaps angling for that insanity plea. Joining me now is Newsweek's senior editor-at-large and Article 3 Project Senior Counsel, Josh Hammer. Josh, the former FBI director, together with the former CIA director, John Brennan, are reportedly under criminal investigation for their part in the Russian collusion hoax, including allegedly making false statements to Congress. How worried should he be? He's saying Republicans are worried about what's coming next year. Should he be worried?
You know, Rita, first of all, it's pretty late here on the East Coast of the United States, and I was planning on just going to sleep after our conversation. But after this video that I have just seen, I am utterly terrified of the possibility that I'm going to be awake all night due to just serial recurring nightmares. So I'm going to have to go in bed and find some comedy on Netflix to just unwind and just try to forget the horror that I just saw there. But, you know, James Comey, going on and on there about how Taylor Swift has seen President Trump up close. Well, now I've also seen Jim Comey up close for the first time in God knows how long. Dude looks like he's aged 25 years over the past 7 or 8 years. First of all, I don't know what he's doing in his personal life. I don't know what's going on there. But I mean, talk about just, like, what was that? Like literally, what was that? I mean, is he literally trying out to become like the backup drummer for the new like Taylor Swift traveling band? Is he trying to be like the third wheel in the Travis Kelce Taylor Swift relationship? I mean, like, what is his end game here exactly there? But if I were Jim Comey, if I were offering unsolicited legal advice to Jim Comey, which I would never do because I would personally prefer to see him locked up behind bars. But if hypothetically I were offering unsolicited legal advice to Jim Comey, I would say stop watching your stupid Taylor Swift crap on the internet and probably go find a good criminal defense lawyer, dude, because you actually need it, because you have probably lied to Congress within the 5-year statute of limitations there. I think that Jim Comey, Clapper, Hillary Clinton, I think all three of them are actually in serious jeopardy here when it comes to the 5-year statute of limitations there. I think the Pam Bondi task force, Rita, is very much on the case there. And if I were Jim Comey, I would be very, very worried. He should stop with this stupid crap. I don't know what the heck he's trying to do here with the Taylor Swift thing, but frankly, it's creepy. It's really, really, really weird there. I would just focus on trying to avoid prison time, dude.
I think there need to be charges, Josh. We've spoken about this in the past. It's all well and good to have some level of transparency and have an understanding of how this Russian collusion hoax came about, who was involved, who was complicit. But without some accountability, without some consequences, what's going to be the disincentive for the Democrats not to do this again the next time around?
Well, you're totally right. There will be no disincentive. Now, it's tragically late as it is. I mean, let's just be clear here. When we're talking about Russiagate, when we're talking about Brennan, Clapper, and Comey cooking the books to launder the Steele dossier, Fusion GPS, Hillary Clinton campaign through the very tail end of the Obama intelligence community. We're talking here about 2016, 2017. I mean, we're talking here about crimes that were committed 8.5, almost 9 years ago, depending on the specific conduct. So the fact that we're even having this conversation now, I think, is frustrating in and of itself. This is a conversation that very much should have happened, frankly, during the first Trump term. I mean, we shouldn't have been talking about the Mueller probe and trying to investigate whether or not Donald Trump was actually a Manchurian candidate, Putin, Kremlin asset. We should have been talking about trying to put people like Jim Comey and John Brennan and Jim Clapper in jail. So the fact that we're having this conversation delayed is extremely frustrating, in and of itself. The problem, Rita, as you and I have discussed, is that a lot of the, shall we say, flashier, sexier crimes have statutes of limitations there. Now, again, as we discussed in the past there, I am of the opinion there that if I were recommending to Pam Bondi's DOJ task force, I think that it is well within the bounds of reason and, dare I say, even prudence to try to get, shall we say, a little creative with some of these statute of limitations tolling, the same way that Alvin Bragg was very creative to Donald Trump when it came to the whole Stormy Daniels, Michael Cohen fraudulent bookkeeping statute there. I mean, the statute of limitations for those quote unquote crimes should have expired like 5 or 6 years or something there. And they found some way to stick that work in the most Stalinist trial in American history there. So if there's a will, there's a way. I don't necessarily love that I'm saying this, by the way. I'm a lawyer. I revere the rule of law, the Constitution there. But Rita, the point is, I think you and I are of like mind on this. Unless you teach these people a lesson, unless until you really sock them across the jaw and they pay some sort of serious price for this, they're going to escalate and escalate and escalate until we're all in some proverbial or literal gulag. And I know that I personally don't want to end up like that.